Only in recent years have scientists begun to examine this animal athlete, to analyze its action and the dynamics of horse and rider. To consider its physiology and training. And it is only recently that the science of genetics has modified or reinforced the myths and intuitions which up to now have guided decisions in the breeding of racehorses. The thoroughbred is the result of a process of domestication which may have begun as long as 20,000 years ago, when some Ice Age artist drew the outline of his hand above a spotted horse. Now there are no wild horses, except for domesticated animals that are left to roam free, as wild horses once did. Such are the ponies of Sable Island. A family of mares and foals is jealously guarded by a dominant stallion. The many domesticated breeds of horses have obscure origins, but going far back in time to the fossil record, the horse provides one of the best preserved stories of the evolutionary process. 50 million years ago, as the dense forest disappeared, a small dog-like creature, Eohippus, was forced to adapt to open plains. By a series of mutations and new combinations of genes, it grew in size and developed a barrel-like body to house the large gut needed to digest grass. To survive, this body had to outrun its predators, and only a radical change in the structure of the leg made this possible.
These bones here demonstrate the changes in foot structure from Eohippus to the modern horse. Apart from the very obvious size difference, there are interesting anatomical differences too. Eohippus has 4 fully developed toes. This is fairly similar to a dog foot, and presumably it would have digital pads underneath each toe and some kind of flattened nail rather than a claw. And shortly after Eohippus, we come to this form, which already one of the toes is gone. It now only has 3 toes. The central one is already becoming the predominant one, though the side toes would still probably touch the ground. In the next stage, these side toes in the natural position don't come anywhere near the ground. And in the horse itself, the side toes are reduced to these so-called splint bones, which only come to about this level. Obviously, they don't touch the ground at all. At this stage where the central toe is developing, it's the equivalent of the large finger in the human hand, and by the time you get to Equus, all the side fingers have gone and the horse is essentially just running on this one finger.
The finger has been transformed into the hoof and pastern and bends at the fetlock joint to the horse's weight. Above the fetlock is the straight cannon bone, and between the cannon bone and the upper half of the leg is the carpus joint, equivalent to the human wrist. The leg is articulated by muscles from the elbow attached by long tendons to the pastern. But there are unique, extra fixed ligaments in the horse, stretching around the fetlock, which act as springs, storing the energy of impact and springing back as the horse moves forward in its stride. Working from MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts, George Pratt analyzes the biomechanics of a horse's gait by using an accelerometer attached to the hoof. A backpack holds a recorder, which is light enough to be carried by the rider and which is wired to the accelerometer. When switched on by the rider, it will keep a continuous plot of the vertical accelerations of the hoof as the horse goes through its paces.
We've recorded with an accelerometer on the horse's hoof the impact of every step. And here we have a record of each stride, every event during the stride, and these shaded peaks are the impacts. So here is stride, 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 stride. These shaded peaks here record the impact peak with the ground. The flat portion later on is when the hoof is seated on the racetrack, and this peak which follows is the snap of the foot coming out of the track. Now the hoof is in the air, and this big peak here is when the hoof reverses its direction in front of the horse and comes back down towards the ground to the next impact. So here we have impact, 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 impact. We're in the air, in the air, in the air.
The horse evolved originally to run on natural turf, and it performs best, therefore, when there is a similar resilience in the track.
The horse's legs are really a set of springs, and he bounds forward from stride to stride on those springs. But the racetrack is also a spring. Therefore, you have a biomechanical problem of the springs in the horse interacting with the spring in the track. We've devised a drop hammer test, and this drop hammer test measures the resilience or the bounce of the racetrack. It also measures the ability of the track to absorb the shock of the impact. You want this system to be tuned so that when the animal's leg compresses the track, he gets that energy back by the track coming back to him before his leg goes on by. If the track is too slow, he compresses that track, and before the track can respond, the horse has left, and therefore he's deposited that energy in the racetrack and gets a little of it back. If the track's too hard, though, he compresses the track comes back and then recompresses before he's left. So again, he's left energy stored in the track. If it's tuned just right, he compresses that spring, and the spring comes back to him just at the moment the foot leaves the ground. Under those circumstances, you have a tuned track, and you can improve times by about 3%. And as a matter of fact, those are the safest tracks to run on. And what you find is that speed and safety, in a sense, do go together. They're not things that are in inevitable conflict with one another.
Before the advent of photography, it was quite beyond the human eye to visualize the whole flowing movement of the thoroughbred.